Our next storyteller that's going to come to you is Tsanonda Edwards.
Truth. Family ties always came a very distant second to economic benefit with regard to the enslaved. In fact, even during the time of your supposed Emancipation Proclamation, destruction of the black family was a constant. First, they would separate the black man because they kind of saw the black family as mother and child. And then what would happen with those little black boys? Well, they were up next, hastily stripped away from their mothers. It happened so often, black mothers would rather see their children die than to watch them face the horrors of slavery. Slavery, bondage. It's interesting the different forms perceived bondage can take. I mean, think about bondage to your job, bondage to debt, bondage to your child. Another truth. There was a time I was angry about having a child. I felt as if I would be enslaved with no signs of freedom. You see, all the plans I had for myself and the way I envisioned my life carrying out. And it's interesting because when I was a teacher, parents, colleagues alike would come up to me all the time. They would say, "You are amazing with children. What's your secret?" Humble, I would usually reply, I love children. Absolutely adore them. The best part? I give them back and dismiss them. And then one day, in comes Kim. She's carrying what she later told me was anxiety. She's carrying news. She's carrying child. Our child. So now, I'm carrying disappointment. I'm carrying anger. I'm carrying bondage. Because at 30, all the passion and the energy and the effort I was pouring into building my life and my dreams would now be poured into a child. No more writing that book, shackled. No more pursuing that doctorate, chained. No more life as I knew it. Noose. And that made me angry. A good father, yes, but angry. And then one day in the hospital, I heard this whisper. Are you sure you don't want him? Because he can be taken. December 2010, this beautiful, sandy-complected, gray-eyed baby boy was born. We decided to name him Tsanonda. 8 months later, we would find ourselves in Johns Hopkins Hospital. You see, he had to have an MRI. He had this thickness on the side of his tongue. It wasn't really big, but it created like a slight little sag in his smile. The doctors wanted to kind of check that out. They said that they weren't, sure if anything was wrong, but they wanted to run the tests to make sure nothing was wrong. And you see, that bit of uncertainty, that unsureness starts my problem with doctors. And don't get me wrong, I understand that someone has to be in charge of the health of humanity. I get that. One of my fondest memories is me getting that cast. Everybody got the right on when I broke my wrist in 4th grade. I also remember the countdown that led to my emergency appendectomy my freshman year of college. Stomach stop hurting. Doctors are great, right? I mean, they can be pretty okay. Sometimes. Because it's also those other times. The flip side of the coin. The uglier side of the coin. Like when the losses of our ancestors was lumped in with losses like crops, losses like cattle. It was one time my Uncle John was in the hospital. My family told them that he was allergic to penicillin. They forgot. Gave it to him anyway. He died. Then there was a time my mother called me from work. She told me that there was this numbness on the right side of her body. I remembered reading somewhere that numbness was sometimes a signal of stroke. I said, you need to get to the hospital immediately. We get her there, she tells the doctors her symptoms, and apparently they must have missed that day in class. Because they sent her home to get rest. She had 5 more strokes that day. And now she's permanently disabled with little to no use of her dominant hand. It kind of reminded me of our ancestors when they were accused of faking injuries. And sometimes that accusation would lead them to the wood of a whipping post, or sometimes even the barrel of a gun. But stuff like that doesn't happen nowadays, right? I mean, since we're emancipated and all. Needless to say, when doctors told us that Kai had to have an MRI, the first question I asked was, well, how do you get an infant to stay still in an MRI machine? I mean, even adults have to be told all the time, be still, be still. How do you do it? The doctor said they would have to sedate him. Sedate him? You mean like with anesthesia? Noticing our instant concern, the doctor said, what we're going to do, we're going to hire a team of experts. These experts are going to get together. It's going to take at least a month to configure the proper dosage, make sure everything is okay for his weight, his age. After telling us that the risk was extremely minimal and that the dosage would be okay, they gave us the appointment for that August, 8 months from his birth. So we're at the hospital. We actually got there a little bit early. Wanted to make sure that we kind of settled ourselves. But most importantly, we wanted to make sure that Kai was settled. I mean, we're handing them over to professionals, but they're still strangers, right? Unbeknownst to us, they would have to make a decision that would change our lives forever. You see, all the experts in the world didn't put together the correct dosage. So they had to administer another dose. Now at this time, his mom and I were up in the cafeteria. We got some breakfast. We just wanted to make sure we were close to when we had to go back to the children's part of the hospital. We got there at about 9:10. He was due to be finished at 9:15. 9:15 turned to 9:16, and instantly mother's intuition kicked in. Mom, Kim, she was at the receptionist desk. You know what? Have a seat. Couple moments, I'll call the doctor, find out what's going on. You have a seat. Moments later, we're back at the receptionist desk. You know what? Let me go ahead and give the doctor another call. I'm sure that she'll be out shortly. Have a seat. See? Moments later, back to the receptionist desk. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call the doctor right now. Oh, but this time we stood there. stood there not knowing, stood there powerless, like we were about to be sold, separated. Then I remember this nurse coming out. Nurse took us to the back, sat us down. I remember her looking like a Mrs. Claus. She was so sweet and daring. She asked us what Kai's name meant. We told him how much he liked water, which happens to be what his name means. She told us that she was from North Carolina and just moved to Baltimore with her husband. We asked her which parts of North Carolina, since we both had family down south. Everybody's got family down south. Right? I remember the conversation being just so light and endearing, and I appreciate her for that. Moments later, in comes the doctor, accompanied by a medical student. There were three things that happened that firmly ingrained this memory in my mind. The first was the doctor coming in, having a seat to compose herself, and licking her lips every few words. Second thing was the accompanying medical student, who desperately tried to mask the look of horror on her face. Wasn't working. And finally, the words, he coded. Are you sure you don't want him? Because he can be taken. Instantly, so much came into perspective that day. Like making sure that the people who are in your life, you make sure you tell them how much you love them. Matter of fact, you need to show them how much you love them. There's gratitude in that. But most importantly, is that this life is not about me. The doctor explained how everything had gone, including the fact that Kyle was resuscitated by a cold team that we actually heard being called in the cafeteria, cold blue. So they led us to the back where he was, alive and well. And even that was the most eerie feeling in the world. I had never heard complete silence in a hotel before, in a hospital before. It was eerie. I felt like I had lost my hearing. And we were walking up to like an auction. All these eyes staring at us. Admittedly, there were a few sad faces, a few tears and compassion. We got to Kai, and he reached out to us, smiling that crooked smile. Kim grabbed him, held him for what seemed like hours. She needed that. And then she handed him to me. I looked at him, stared at him, really. I remember the nurse saying he seemed so much more calm since I was there. Since we were there for him. And that's the happy ending that you want, right? I mean, now he's the most perfect 10-year-old in the world, alive and well. But that's not what makes this moment so profound for me. It taught me that so often we run away from our responsibilities and we try to blame these gifts that God gives us in the form of children. The reality is this: children don't stop our dreams. We stop our dreams. Children don't deter our greatness. We deter our greatness. Children don't take our liberation. We take liberation. You want proof of that? That book I supposedly couldn't write, it is now written and published. Kai's mom is now a doctor. And life, while well, not exactly as I envisioned it. It's even better. Because now, I get to push him to be the absolute best that he can be. Because, I mean, he's my legacy. He's his own legacy. And no one is going to take that from him.